DBS Television. My name is Timothy Polion. We go up until 10 o'clock this evening, at which time we'll be playing you the clip that peaked. Of course, you do not want to miss that part of the broadcast, as well as the preceding moments as well. I have a special guest as usual. My guest is the island's minister with responsibility for health, and she's also here in her capacity as a former president of the St. Lucia Civil Service Association. We've been hearing comments coming from the former CSA president, and one particular comment did stand out for a number of reasons. We'll be speaking with her on that. Also, people are taking issue, some sections of the public are taking issue with the government's decision not to complete the St. Jude Hospital. And so far, I've been hearing from the Prime Minister Alan Shastney, as to whether they'll be taking a decision to complete the health institution or whether a new health institution will be constructed. Welcome to the broadcast, Madam Health Minister, Senator Mary Isaac.
Thank you very much, Timothy.
As I said before, there's a particular statement that you made just a few days ago. It did not sit well with some sections of the public, in particular the island's public sector workers. So we'll go straight into that comment which was made by you when you were quizzed by some of the island's reporters.
While you stand up for your rights, you always have to remember you have to survive, and you ought not to bite the hand that feeds you.
What say you, ma'am, to this comment?
Well, I think, Timothy, that is a comment that is really a doctrine that we ought to live by. That permeates throughout our lives. From the time we are born, we cannot bite the hand that feeds us. If a child bites his mother's hand or her mother's hand, then what are the consequences, right? On the other hand, a parent ought to respect a child. Parents have to respect their children, because these are the very same people that are the future, that are going to carry on when you are gone, or that are going to become the factors of production after you are too old to do so. So you are looking at your country's resources when you look at children. So you cannot take advantage of anyone in that situation. Workers, you are the factors of production. The employer needs you to make money or to maximize his or her profit, okay? So you are the hand the employer cannot bite in that case. On the other hand, you need the employer to pay you a salary. You need that salary for you to survive. So you cannot bite the hand that feeds you. So no matter how you look at it, it is a situation where two hands must clap, and neither ought to bite the hand that feeds them. So when I said that, public workers took it as though I was saying, government is the hand that feeds you, and therefore, you cannot bite the hand that feeds you. And some people go as far as saying, when they were standing in the sun supporting me when I was president of CSA, I did not say that. But when I stood there, I was sending the message to the employer that we, the workers, are the hand that feeds you. And therefore, you cannot treat us unfairly. You see? So people, I think, took it out of context, and they do not see the bigger picture. Also, sometimes in St. Lucia, the medium becomes the message. So they attack the messenger instead of looking at the message that the person is sending out there.
But couldn't you have put it in a more refined manner where it would not have been misconstrued, misinterpreted?
But Tim, that is the message I wanted to send out. Before I was president of CSE, before I was in any trade union, I was heading a department in government. And that is what I used to say to my staff. When we had issues, we would try and sort it out. And I would say, there is a line we get to that we do not cross. You are not going to go and disrespect your permanent secretary or, somebody in a higher management position. And the person who is in the higher management position ought not to disrespect the worker whom he or she supervises either. So I used to say that even before trade unionism.
But when in 2014, public sector workers were seeking some 9.5% in terms of increased wages from the then government of Prime Minister Dr. Kenny Anthony, and decided to take industrial action, weren't they biting the hand that fed them? Or
No,
was
they were
feeding them?
not. They were actually reminding the employer that you have to be fair to us, because in this case now, it is the workers.
But the employer then was saying, because of the fiscal deficit of some EC $76 million, they really could not afford to pay 9.5%. If you cannot afford, you really cannot afford.
But you remember, Timothy, we were still at 9.5% CSA when the other unions were signing off on a 4%. Okay? And that was being done secretly, although they claim that we were under one umbrella body. All the other unions, except of course NWU always stands out, the teachers union, the nurses association, the police, the firemen, they were signing off on a 4%. However, when we went and we sat with the Prime Minister really explained and showed us where we cannot afford to give you an increase, a salary increase. We were still CSA was still negotiating. And we thought the others were still negotiating as well. But behind our backs, they went and they signed off without any kind of consultation with CSA or anything. We heard about it. You understand? So we went back and we spoke with the Prime Minister. And at that time, we asked the Prime Minister if we could look at other benefits. Benefits other than financial, other than money, a salary increase. And he said, sure. We can consider that. We can table something, and the negotiating team will look at it. And that is what we were in the process of doing when they went and signed off on the 4%. We still continued along those lines. I went back to the workers and explained to them that, hey, the country really cannot afford to give us a salary increase. And that is where the workers said, okay, in that case, let us look at some of the other benefits that you were considering. We were looking at the government giving land to public workers so that maybe at a discounted price or maybe free. We had not negotiated the terms or anything as yet. We looked at government making available to us some funds to go into our medical insurance plan and an education fund, and that was of course agreed to over a 3-year period. And benefits that will not cost the government money, where they don't have to look for revenue to pay public servants a salary increase. And that is where we were. CSA agreed to take a 0-0-0 because we understood at the time that the employer could not afford a 4% or anything at all, you see. And on the collective agreement for that year, for that triennium, CSA's collective agreement actually has 0-0-0.
What say you to the public sector workers who really felt offended when you made that comment? Because as you heard from the president of the Civil Service Association, Mr. Claude Paul, it was almost hypocritical on your part to have made that statement at the time. Do not bite the hand that feeds you.
I don't expect anything better from the current regime at CSA. And this is why all the hoopla happened when I was at CSA, because CSA has been predominantly a Labour Party platform. And that is the problem. When UWP is in power, that Labour Party platform becomes very active and agitated. And they go after the United Workers' Party government. You remember the 14%? It's always under UWP regime that they come out and agitate like that.
But isn't it safe to say that whilst you were there as president, considering what we know now, you as being a government senator, that maybe you were basically there to push the agenda of the United Workers' Party?
That is not so at all. Because if you look back, you will realize that it was mostly Labour Party people who supported me to become president of CSA. Because at the time, CSA was a predominantly Labour Party platform. And they believed that I was a Labour Party supporter. And this is why everybody came and supported me at the time.
But at that time, you were a supporter of the United Workers' Party?
I was not. I was not any supporter of anybody. the first time I voted was in 97, right? 97. That was the first time I voted in St. Lucia. And that year, Labour Party won a 16-1 mandate. So most St. Lucians voted for change, voted for the Labour Party. Because Sir John had been in office for so long, and he was aging, and people felt Dr. Kenny Anthony was coming in, fresh blood, young, you know, looking very vibrant and everything, a person for the people. And if St. Lucia figured we needed change. So the majority of St. Lucians voted for the St. Lucia Labour Party.
Would you ever make that statement again?
Yes, because it is a doctrine that I believe we have to live by, Timothy. You cannot, not as a child, not as a student, not as a worker, you cannot bite the hand that feed you.
And you're asking the public sector workers in this regard to cower, to put their rights on the side, desire to get an increase in salary, primarily because their employer, the government of St. Lucia, is the one that is compensating them for their services.
No, because you see, the workers are the factor of production. Without the workers, the government of St. Lucia cannot survive. The country cannot succeed. So, when I say do not bite the hand that feed you, it goes both ways, Timothy. The government cannot disregard the workers or treat the workers unfairly. And I know, myself being in this cabinet, I know that my government is never going to take any decision that is going to affect the workers adversely.
But what if it does? What would be your position? What would be your stance?
As long as I am in that cabinet team, every decision we take concerning public workers and workers in St. Lucia will be a fair decision.
But what if it comes to a point where you deem it to be unfair? Because the man who has the last word is the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Mr. Alan Chastanet. What if he takes a position that you deem to be unfair to the workers of St. Lucia? What stance will you take?
This is where we are wrong. Because we say the Prime Minister has the last say. The Prime Minister has a cabinet of ministers, and he does not have the last say. It has to be a collective decision. And especially with that Prime Minister, it is always a collective decision. We must have consensus.
Again, what if?
Well, I don't see that happening, Timothy. I don't see that happening.
But anything, Madam Minister, is possible. What if it takes a decision or a position that you think is unfair to the public sector workers of St. Lucia?
Well, the workers will stand up for their rights.
They will stand for their rights. But what will you, as a former president of the Civil Service Association, say or do? What position will you take?
I will advise the government that the position it's taking is unfair. You understand?
What if that advice falls on deaf ears?
I don't see it falling on deaf ears, Timothy. I don't see it falling on deaf ears.
But anything, you would know that anything is possible, Madam Minister.
Well, you know the consequences. The workers will do what the workers have to do. That's all.
Do you find yourself in a precarious situation right now, being a former president of the CSA and being a government minister, in terms of shared responsibility, in terms of your loyalties?
Actually, Timothy, I'm really happy where I am because I feel I am the gatekeeper for the workers in my cabinet. I always ensure that whatever decisions we take, I speak out on decisions that impact on the workers, and I'm always consulted. As a trade unionist, I'm always consulted. So I do not see this cabinet taking decisions that adversely affect anyone in St. Lucia. You understand? Because that is the type of government that you are dealing with. You get the most benefits under United Workers' Party government.
Public sector workers took a wage freeze for the period 2013 to 2016. And we're getting all set for conclude negotiations for 2016 to 2019.
Well, not all public sector workers, because remember, some of them got a 4%.
Yes.
We got a 4%. They gave us a 4% regardless and wanted to take a 5% the following year. So you are looking at a process that was really, it really was a very dishonest process as far as I am concerned. Because you cannot be having, you know, some public sector workers agreeing to a 4%, giving everybody the 4%, regardless of the fact that CSA sign off on a 000, and the following year wanting to take a 5%. That was just, I think that is unheard of in the history of the whole world. I do not think there's any way that has ever happened.
But what should the workers say before this time around?
The workers have to put their case forward, and the government negotiating team will look at it, and you take it from there.
But do you have a horse in the race? Are you in a position to say that you support the workers getting an increase in their salaries?
I can advise either side.
Are you in a position right now to say anything with regard to what should happen? Because the government is saying that there was a 2.5% improvement in the state of the St. Lucian economy. Against that background, the workers are saying if there's an improvement, then we want our share. Do you think that the government of St. Lucia is in a position right now to give any increases in the wages, to increase the wages or the salaries of public sector workers right now?
Timothy, since we are just trying to come out of all the negative growth that we were experiencing over the past few years, last year we had a little bit of positive growth, and this year there is also positive growth, although some people are doubting it. We also still have very high unemployment. So government is going to focus on continuing to reduce that unemployment, continuing to reduce the debt, the public debt, and then look at what else it can do. But I am sure that the trade unions can look at other benefits, like the route that we were trying to take at CSA when I was there. They can look at other benefits, and even as we speak, government is also looking at benefits for other benefits for public sector workers. When you look at the national health insurance, there are a lot of public sector workers at the lower grades that cannot afford health care. And so when you go and you put a national health insurance in place, all these workers are treated equally in the healthcare system. So that already in itself is a way of providing relief for public sector workers and for everybody in the whole country. So this is a government that think about the people and think about the needs of the people and see how best it can take care of those needs.
But given certain benefits to the public sector workers, don't you think that still will come at a cost to the taxpayers, considering our high debt and other problems?
Well, everybody has to pay. You understand, Timothy? If government cannot afford to give a salary increase on the one hand, there must be other things that government consider doing. If government can give land, for instance, we have a lot of crown lands. If government is able to give land to public sector workers, which taxpayer is paying? I do not see any taxpayer paying, not immediately anyway. You understand? So this is just one of the areas that government can reach out. Government can say, for instance, people who work in the healthcare sector do not, even from now, do not have to pay for certain services. That is a way they can help public sector workers. Things like that. Government can put daycare services in the different, buildings, in the different places that people work, so they do not have to go out there and source daycare services. They can do that at a concessionary rate. There are different things that you can do to help workers that may not necessarily dip into the public purse.
How do you think that public sector workers can justify getting an increase in their wages when, for example, it's not automatic that private sector workers get an increase in their wages, and they're all bearing the burden of low economic growth, of high unemployment, of high prices, and things of that nature. Public sector workers seem to display that kind of innate right to get an increase in their wages.
Well, Tim, you have to consider a lot of things about public sector workers. If you look at, for instance, bonuses and things like that, public sector workers do not get these things. Christmas time, you hear private sector giving a little something. Some people in the private sector, they work and they get a commission if the company perform and things like that. And private sector workers are really required to work whenever they are called upon. That is the only sector in society that is required to do that. So you cannot compare the two in terms of salary increases. The public sector worker is just getting compensated for the work and what they are contributing to society in most cases.
How are you hoping that this whole thing will play out? Because one can really imagine that the negotiations will be probably drawn out and contentious. You've had your own experiences and so on. In the end, the government, the public sectors might be persistent and unyielding in terms of wanting an increase in their wages.
Timothy, even while I was president of CSA, at the regional level as well as internationally, we were already contemplating what exactly is the use of trade unions today. We were checking to see how relevant are trade unions today. Are they really relevant? And a lot of the organizations, the regional organizations, were looking at how we can best tailor it now, retailor it, for lack of a better word. Change the purpose of trade unions, not only to negotiate for salaries, not only for salary negotiations, because a lot of times you have a system in government that provides for public sector workers to get a salary increase, right? I know under the former administration, they had suspended the appraisal system, where if you get free appraisals, you automatically are supposed to go up one grade and that sort of thing, or one step. And when you go up 3 steps, in some places you go up 1 grade. So public servants, there is a system where public workers are supposed to get an increase ever so often. They suspended that. So now we have started looking at that, revisiting that, to put that back in place. So after a while, you may well find that this negotiating salaries and so on may be a thing of the past. But you still need trade unions, because there are a lot of people in the workplace who really cannot fight their own battles, so to speak. And these people need the trade union to stand up for them. But the trade unions now have to start to figure out better ways of remaining relevant.
What do you think is a conflict of interest for trade unionists to also have political leanings? Because it almost seems that that's automatic. If you take, for example, over several decades ago, some of the key trade unionists in St. Lucia ventured into politics. It seems that we expect. Mm-hmm. But do you think it's working to the detriment of the country when you have people who are trade unionists and they have political ambitions? And somebody might easily say that you're one of the key people. As president of the CSA, maybe even then you knew that you had political ambitions, and therefore you're taking certain decisions that would be counterproductive to how the government was running its affairs, the government of the St. Lucia Labour Party at the time?
I don't think so. I think people in any walk of life can have political ambition, okay? I had absolutely no political ambition at all. When I got into CSA, because of something that went wrong, when we were fighting for the 14%, and the government went and just gave us 7% and said, we don't have any more money, that's all we can give. That is where I started standing up, because I felt that was wrong. And that was a United Workers' Party government, right? I had absolutely no intention.
But weren't you simultaneously president of the CSA and an opposition senator?
No, that was after. Mm-hmm. But when they were negotiating the 14%, I was not even president of CSA. I was just an ordinary member. I was an ordinary worker in the public service. And when I heard about that, I said, but this is really nonsense. They cannot just impose a 7% without coming back to consult the union. That was my problem with that. I stood up based on principle. I did not mind if the government had said, we cannot afford anymore. Let's renegotiate, because there is a clause in the collective agreement that allows for that. I said, you mean there is the clause? And yet still the government went and used a heavy hand and just imposed 7%. And I said, no, that is wrong. That is when I took to the microphone, just as an ordinary floor member. But then by the time that was over, I found out that the union, we marched that time, we marched against United Workers' Party. And I was not president at the time. Doc Surrey was president. And then I found out that we were not, legally, we were not supposed to be on strike. We should not have had that strike, because the employer was not informed that we were withdrawing our services, and we could have gotten fired. So after that strike thing, I went home and I said, I'm getting out of that union, because I could have gotten fired for taking to the streets and so on, and some public workers could have gotten fired. And I said, that is so wrong. How can the union do that? And somebody, an older person, said to me, but how can you just leave a union that you have spent so much money paying dues for so many years? You have never made an effort to help this union. Why don't you go there and see what you can do for your union. And that is when I started becoming interested in what was going on at CSA. Prior to that, I was never interested.
But to the earlier point of you serving as both CSA president and as an opposition senator, do you think it would have been more, probably lack of better word, ethical to serve as an independent senator?
You see, Timothy, I was going to these meetings, the regional meetings, international meetings, and I saw a lot of countries where the trade unions were pushing to put their members in the parliament. You understand? So that these members now, in the belly of the beast, would be able to negotiate and, you know, speak on behalf of the workers in those countries. Barbados had it, Antigua had it. Up to now, Senator Humphrey is still in the Senate in Grenada, right? And in Trinidad you have it. You have it in so many places. And these people are very happy to have their member as a member of parliament, a member in the Senate or member of parliament.
But you serving as an opposition senator, you are not likely to side with the government on anything at all, any issue at all, because your political leader certainly will call upon you to, change your position.
But Timothy, even in politics, we're supposed to be honest. We're supposed to be decent citizens and do what is right for the country.
Yeah, but a conflict of interest in politics as well. Conflict of interest is not acceptable.
No, Timothy. You do not have to behave like I see, the Labour Party behaving now in opposition. There were times in opposition in the Senate when we agreed to certain bills passing, when we agreed with something that the government was doing. Okay? The Consumer Protection Bill passed when I was in the Senate. And this is a bill that I worked on in my capacity as a public worker in the Department of Consumer Affairs. And I was very, very happy to see that bill go through, right? So there are times when you agree in the interest of the country. You don't just oppose just for opposing sake. And a lot of times we didn't say anything. And you have an opportunity to influence political decisions in the Senate or in Parliament. So that is where the trade unions ought to be. You understand? So you take care of the problem before it actually, you take care of whatever the issue is before it becomes a problem. And you have the opportunity to advise, even in opposition.
You're watching a Newsmaker Live, and my guest this evening is the island's Health Minister, Senator Isaac. We are speaking on issues relating to the trade union movement, and of course, the comment, do not bite the hand that feeds you. When we come back, we'll be focusing on some of the island's health problems and the way forward. Stay with us. Of course, later, your calls. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. You're watching Newsmaker Live on DBS Television. My name is Timothy Polion, and my guest is the island's Health Minister, Senator Mary Isaac. At 9:30, we'll be taking your calls, so please stay with us, and we conclude with the clip that peaked. It's already 2.5 minutes after 9 o'clock. Now, when you're talking about health in St. Lucia these days, you're talking about, in particular, among other issues, in particular, St. Jude Hospital. What is the latest with regard to the structure? Will it be completed? Will it be demolished? Will a new structure be constructed to house the St. Jude Hospital, which is currently at the George Odlum Stadium?
Timothy, infrastructure does not come under the Ministry of Health. But of course, we know that our workers are under a lot of pressure in that St. Jude Hospital. The people have stayed there, the workers, the sick people come there, and it is far from ideal, especially with the decay that's taking place and so on and so forth. So we really would like to see our workers out of there as quickly as possible. But the situation we inherited is one that you cannot do anything with overnight. It is something that you have to look at carefully, because when you look at a hospital that has taken 9 years, right? You cannot just in 1 or 2 years decide, to erect a structure and it's going to conform to the right standards. So the government of the day, and again, because of all the money they spent on this hospital, in excess of $170 million. There is no money to build a new hospital or even to continue with what is there as far as I know, right? So government has to look at what is the best fit to get this hospital up and running, completed, right? We have been told that it's going to cost almost as much to complete this hospital, to fix it and complete it, but it would take a little longer than if you were just to start and build a new hospital, start a fresh hospital and build a new hospital.
That is
right?
that is not what we've been hearing. For example, this week we heard from Mr. John Peters in a television interview, a former chief engineer in the then Ministry of Communications and Works. He was saying that, for example, if the hospital, the cost of the present structure is about, let's say, $100 million, it should take at least another, it takes several thousand, if not several $1 million to complete. Don't you think that it's worth that kind of investment? If you already have a structure, if you spend millions of dollars to undertake that particular initiative, why not spend a few more $1 million to complete it?
You see, people think it is just completing the hospital, and when they go and see it, they change their mind about just completing it. Because when you see the monstrosity that is there on the ground, I don't even know what it is that they can do with that thing. They are saying, you know, complete the hospital, and some people are actually saying, give it to me, I can complete it, but take them to see it. And you hear a different story. They start singing a different tune. Because it is not just to complete what's there.
Peters visited the structure just recently.
You have standards for a hospital, Timothy. And that thing does not meet hospital standards. So whoever it is that think they can take it and complete it for a few more $1 million, I believe they are wrong.
But why has it taken this government 22 months to be in that situation where it does not even know what is the next step as far as the St. Jude Hospital is concerned? 22 months has elapsed.
What the government has said right now, up to this point, is that we are looking to build a new hospital, which is going to cost as much as fixing this thing, right? And it's probably going to take less time, even if it is a few months less time. But at least we are going to look at building a structure that is going to meet the necessary standards, because as you remember this budget, we talk about resilience, building resilience. You are looking at now, we are faced with hurricanes that reach hurricane force 5, category 5, and so on, right? So you cannot go building a structure that from the very beginning you know it does not meet the right standards, okay? It is better.
Do you think the current George Odlum Stadium, which is housing the hospital, would withstand a category 5 hurricane compared to this structure?
Well,
which is a lot newer.
We do not know, Timothy. We do not know.
But is it
because
a chance worth taking?
You have a structure where you have a ramp for an ambulance to go on, and the ambulance cannot climb on that ramp because it is too small. You have hallways where gurneys cannot move and turn, right? So what do you do with that? I'm telling you, the thing does not meet, in most cases, it does not meet hospital standards. So if it's going to take about the same time to complete it, you have nothing to lose by building a new structure that is going to withstand that sort of thing that you are looking at, that is more resilient, okay? You have nothing to lose by building a new structure, because it's going to take about the same time to build as well as to fix the other one.
The chances are,
so in terms of time,
the next general election will surface come 2021, and this government would not have completed a new general hospital, a new hospital in the south of the island.
Timothy, I don't think so. I don't think that is correct. I believe that we are going to be able to complete that hospital if we start it from scratch, and we have the right plans and everything else to build a hospital with hospital standards, to complete that hospital within the time that we are looking at, which is about 2 years. They were saying 18 months to 2 years, right? We have gone to visit other hospitals that were built within that time, and that cost about the same. Okay, we're saying the same cost to complete and the same time as to build and complete. So which is better? You may be completing something that does not meet hospital standards. So we are going to build a new hospital, And we are going to use that structure, complete that structure, and use it as a medical school. So we are going to be using the structure. It's not going to go to waste.
So a decision has been taken on this issue?
Well, that is the thinking right now. Okay, that is the plan on the ground, but nothing has been signed off. We have not agreed with anybody in terms of who is going to do it, when it's going to be done, or anything like that. But that is the thinking moving forward.
So you're saying that the plan, you say the thinking. Can I say that categorically, that is what the government intends to do?
At this point in time, that is what the government, that is the position of the government at this point in time. To build a new hospital right next to St. Jude on the other side, because there is space there. And I hear people talking about building it all over the world and whatever. Just on the other side of the road, because there is a lot of land on that side of the road. We don't want to destroy the structure that they've already started. Complete that structure, build it into a medical school. Get a PPP, not privatization, which is very convenient for some people to say. It is a public-private partnership we are looking at, because government of St. Lucia cannot finance those structures, Timothy. So we must have partners. It could be a set of St. Lucian doctors, if they want to come together and put forward the funds that are going to be necessary to build a new hospital and run the new hospital. There is nothing wrong with that. Or if they want to complete the other structure as a medical school and run it as a medical institution, we don't have a problem with that. Okay? But we are not saying to privatize any of our hospitals for now. We know government cannot sustain those hospitals. So we must find revenue streams to sustain our hospitals.
But I think the difficulty that is coming across, at least to the man in the street, is that there's too much uncertainty with regard to government plans for the St. Jude Hospital.
Well, Timothy, we are not going to go and tell people the hospital will finish in, like the former administration was saying. When I came on board, I was tired of hearing the dates that hospital would be completed. When I went to see the structure, I was shocked. I really and truly was shocked to see that the thing was not even 50% complete, and they already had an opening date for the thing. I myself was saying, based on what the information that we were being given by the former administration, that we can have that hospital open in a few months. But when I went to see it, that was a different story. And I have seen a lot of hospitals in the world. That thing cannot serve as a hospital. We will have to break down part of it. They've said the electricals are in the wall, there was no plan, and there's all kinds of issues. So that's why I'm saying Ministry of Health is not responsible for infrastructure, and thank God for that, because I don't know how I would have been able to deal with that thing. It is Minister Guy Joseph and so on. So I am hoping that, at some point he's going to be, I know he's working really hard to come with something concrete and say when we are going to be able to start the new hospital and when we are going to look at starting to complete the other structure that's already there. But first of all, we have to find the finances to do that. And this is what they are doing right now. They are considering different proposals to see which is the best one so that we can move forward with these two structures. But
what if you have a major emergency problem over in the south of the island? Do you think that the government run the risk of paying a heavy price for this, for dragging its feet on this St. Jude Hospital matter?
Timothy, the government is not dragging its feet. The government is ensuring that it puts everything that is necessary in place so that when we start this hospital, we can complete this structure. We had a big emergency when St. Jude Hospital burned, and we got a temporary solution.
Yeah, but temporary, it appears, has become permanent.
I agree with you on that one. And that is something that we are going to change. But we have to take our time in doing that so that we are sure we are doing the right thing. There is no money to build these things that people are saying, build the hospital, build the hospital. The funds that we had to put into those structures, it's finished. In excess of $170 million. So where is the money to build?
Yeah, but we used precious financial resources to carry out an audit. So the only thing part of that money, or that money could have been used to help complete
But
the
you
health
need the
institution.
audit to tell you what it is that you need to do. You cannot just go blindly and continue things you do not know, you didn't start, and you don't even understand what is happening. If you see the report on this hospital, and the report was done by the economic department. It was not a private person or anything like that, the report that I saw. And it is telling you, it's pointing out a lot of issues. You know, they have not gotten a plan from DCA, approval from DCA, and all kinds of things. So I don't want to get into those things because I know Mr. Joseph, that is his portfolio. But as a lay person, as a person who is, say for instance, the ordinary citizen out there, this is how I see it, because I'm no engineer or anything like that. I am very concerned about the fact that we have our people in the stadium, and we need to get them out of that stadium. But I also do not want us to go and do a half-half job, and at the end of the day, we are in more trouble than if we had just done the thing the right way and get a hospital that is up to standard. We have an international airport in the south. We have to consider these people who may need those services.
But we have something to build on, which is the structure that was that is basically there unoccupied.
But the structure is not good, Timothy.
Can you fix it? Shouldn't we try to fix it?
It's going to take as much money to fix it as it's going to take to build a new hospital. And it will take an even longer time. You understand?
What is the latest with the OKEU hospital?
Well, OKEU hospital is the exciting thing that is happening now. We are moving into it by phases. We are gradually moving in. We've moved in dialysis. We've moved in the physiotherapy. We are going to be moving in, I believe, outpatient, you know, and so on. And we'll continue moving.
Why in phases?
Because it is more effective that way. You cannot, well, we, a small island state as we are, we don't even have the resources, say for instance the transportation capacity, the type of capacity you would need to just move everything and everybody from a hospital and go into a new structure. So it is better, it is more efficient for us that we are moving gradually. So we move department by department, and once that department is settled, we look at moving the other department, and so far everything is going smoothly.
When are you looking to commence that process? The relocation from the Victoria Hospital to the OKEU. How soon are you hoping to commence?
Complete it, you mean?
No, commence the relocation process. Moving the staff and equipment and so on from Victoria Hospital to the OKEU.
We're already doing that. We're already doing that. But I'm saying we're doing it in phases. So some of the staff and some of the things are already there. We have part of pharmacy, because for you to run dialysis, you need the supporting interventions. Pharmacy is already there, part of the pharmacy, what the dialysis patients need. Now we've moved physiotherapy, so you find more pharmaceuticals have moved also. And this is how we are doing it. We also have a lot of people still getting training to move into the new hospital.
How soon are you hoping to complete the process?
We are hoping to complete it by September, but December is the final deadline. Everything has to be out of VH. Everything that's supposed to go to the new hospital must be out of VH by then. But September is the very first deadline, and then everything else will go by December of this year.
What will happen to VH by December?
Victoria Hospital is going to become a polyclinic. Hopefully, we are looking at the chaussee, the hospital on the chaussee, the health center, the wellness center on the chaussee, moving to a polyclinic situation where Victoria Hospital is. And also we are looking at refurbishing that complex to house all the offices of the Ministry of Health. But of course, Timothy, that's going to take a lot of money.
You're talking about VH or VH
Victoria
housing?
Hospital, yeah, because that's a huge structure. That is a beautiful hospital. All they had to do was keep maintaining that facility and so on. And that is the thing. We cannot move into OKEU with the same mentality and the same thinking that we had at Victoria Hospital. There are a lot of things at Victoria. Look at the grounds of Victoria Hospital. You could have a nice garden, you could have nice plants, flowers and everything, but nothing, Timothy. And throughout the hospital, you have all kinds of equipment that's broken down, and they just sit there. Salvaging committee is supposed to come and take a look and get rid of it, and that's not happening. And it's just a lot of, I don't.
But how do you hope to finance the operations of the OKEU hospital? Because that's a serious issue. To the extent that there's talk of having a public-private partnership, PPP.
That's right.
How do you hope to finance it?
That's right. Timothy, we are moving into the OKEU, and we have to institute a board. So that is where it's going to be run by a statutory. It's going to be a statutory corporation run by a board. Okay, so the board is going to have to find ways and means of financing the operations of the hospital, and that is where the PPP comes in. So it really is the board that's going to take that decision. What do they do to finance the
But the Ministry of Health
operations?
by now should have had a position on this. Likewise, the Ministry of Finance should have a position on this.
We
If
do.
you're saying that you want to move in between September and December of this year.
You see, a lot of things are going on at the same time, because we're also looking at the National Health Insurance Plan and moving the staff, relocating from Victoria Hospital to OKEU, putting a board in place, and the formation of a PPP to sustain the operations of the
But
hospital.
isn't it confusion? Shouldn't we be taking it one step at a time?
That's what we are doing. That's what we are doing. That's why we are moving the people from the staff and the people from OKEU from Victoria Hospital into OKEU in phases. At the same time, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Public Service, the Ministry of Health are looking at all the staffing arrangements, right? We're looking to put a board in place, but it is not yet in place, but the legislation is there, and it stipulates somebody from the Ministry of Health sits on the board, somebody from, it stipulates who's going to be on the board from a consumer association, from the trade union, and so on and so forth, right? So we are not doing everything at one time, but different agencies that are responsible for doing different things are taking it step by step. So by the time the move is complete, the board comes into play, right? Then you have the National Health Insurance is already, being formalized, formulated.
But you're giving the impression that the National Health Insurance and all the intricacies that involved in setting it up will overnight come into effect. No, it will not come into effect overnight.
Definitely not overnight. Because we're looking to complete the move by September. If worse comes to worse, December. You have hurricane season. You have all kinds of things that can happen, right? We're also looking to have the board in place by the time the move is complete. Because the board is just, naming the people, and the legislation already stipulates where they ought to come from, okay? Now that board is going to sit and look at the different proposals we have in terms of who should they get into a public-private partnership arrangement with. These things take time, but they are not mutually exclusive, okay? So while one is happening, almost completed, you go to the next one and the next one. Right now, I'm telling you, as we are moving into OKEU, the Ministry of Public Service, Finance, and Health are also looking at staffing arrangements. Because what you have is some public servants may not want to go into the OKEU arrangement. They may want to go back be absorbed back into the public service. And there is that option, right? So Ministry of Public Service, that is where they get involved, because they are government, they are public servants, okay, we are dealing with. And you have the Public Service Commission and all of that taking place. So that's a different activity from physically moving into the new hospital. So different things are happening at different stages.
But how will that affect the services being provided to patients in terms of, for example, affordability? Will the cost of the health sector come into play as far as patients having to pay, members of the public having to meet that cost? Since we're already talking about a PPP arrangement.
This is why we have to go into national health insurance for our people and the PPP arrangement. The National Health Insurance is going to provide a package of services for all St. Lucians. Okay? The employer is going to pay into that system. The employee is going to contribute, as well as government is going to meet the shortfall. The shortfall government has to meet may well be partly funded through that PPP. Now, the board may decide to have a tourism product, okay, outside of the package that is offered to St. Lucians. But St. Lucian's citizens will have a package where they can access healthcare. They have a card, and whether you are working or not, you will have the same rights to access healthcare as anybody else. It's more like the rich or the working paying for the poor and those that are not.
But whilst we trying to come up with a proper mechanism to determine how we'll be financing the operations of the OKEU hospital, it certainly will be a burden to taxpayers. Okay, we have to determine how are we financing its operations. And you're saying it will be long-term through National Health Insurance, right?
Well, the PPP as well as, yeah.
But in the initial stage, how will you finance the operations?
Well, we are financing Victoria Hospital now, and what we are doing is we just moving the people over. So the same budget that we have for VH is going to be taking us into the OKEU. But we have to be careful to quickly work so that we have a revenue stream to sustain the hospital.
So how soon are you hoping, is the government hoping to have the PPP arrangement in place?
Hopefully by next year, because we want all our people moved and settled. We want all our workers to know where they are, what they are doing, and things like that before the board comes into play, and then the board is going to engage, whoever it is, to discuss the PPP arrangement.
And also know the National Health Insurance being in place.
We are working on that, and we are hoping that by 2019, we will start seeing where we can institute that national health insurance.
So it will take that long?
Oh, yes. Because we're in 2018, team, about another year. Yeah, because you have to work out all the logistics and everything. Where is the money coming from? Who is paying into what? We have to engage all the stakeholders, the private sector, everybody, so that, we can have buy-in and the support to go ahead and do it.
We are hearing recently that under the PPP arrangement, nurses might be impacted negatively.
I don't think so, Timothy. Because right now, most of our nurses, a lot of our nurses, they are on contract. Okay? So since they are already on contract, and one of the things we have now in St. Lucia is that you have a lot of nurses on 3 month contract, 3 months contract. There is no security of tenure, nothing like that, and every 3 months they get renewed. So you are looking at a situation where your nurses will be more secure, and unless the nurse wants to get out of the system or something, we need all the nurses that we have. OKEU is bigger, it demands more workers, so we are going to be needing all our workers, all our nurses. I don't see why a nurse would think that, they would not be needed in the system.
What are your general plans for the island's important health sector, which a lot of people tell you would be, is no pun intended, is ailing, and has been ailing for quite some time?
It has been ailing for quite some time, Timothy. We have a very bad situation on our hands. We inherited that. It has been going on for a long time. I will not say that it's just the former, administration. Healthcare is a problem in a lot of countries. And for a long time, the healthcare system was neglected. Okay? So it is something that we have to pay a lot of attention to right now. We have a lot of the workers who are putting their best foot forward, the people at the Ministry of Health. You will not believe the amount of training that is going on, the amount of work that these people are doing. Sometimes I feel sorry for these people. But they are driven, and it is something that they want to see happen. So I think all in all, we are going to be in a better place if everybody played a role that they're supposed to play, especially when you are looking at that national health insurance. It is not even going to be run by the Ministry of Health. We very likely are going to have that housed with the NIC because they already have a structure in place, right? So the sooner we can get that going, the better, because we have a lot of St. Lucians that are dying right now because of lack of health care. They cannot access the services. So these people cannot pay to go to Martinique. They cannot get chemotherapy, radiation therapy in St. Lucia. They have to go overseas, and they just cannot afford it. And then what happens, So if we have a national health insurance, everybody will be entitled to the same amount of health care. Primary health care will be a priority, so that we can reduce on the burden on tertiary healthcare. And that is one of the reasons why OKEU had less beds than Victoria Hospital, because the hope is that as people get more conscious of their health, as we put more emphasis on primary healthcare, we are going to reduce on the amount of people that actually need tertiary healthcare to be hospitalized and that sort of thing. So we are focused on the health agenda, and I think it is going to redound to benefits for all St. Lucians.
When we come back, it will be your turn to call in so that you can pose your questions and your comments to my guest, once again, the island's health minister, Senator Mary Isaac. You're watching Newsmaker Live. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. We'll put a telephone number on the screen right now so that you can call with your comments and questions for my guest. Once again, the island's health minister, Senator Mary Isaac. And earlier on, we also spoke with her in a capacity as a former president of the Civil Service Association. We already have a caller line. Hello, good evening to you. Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening to you, caller.
Good evening.
Yes, I was calling just to confirm something about that whole PPP thing.
Mm-hmm.
According to Wikipedia, a PPP is a cooperative agreement between two or more public and private sectors, typically for a long-term nature. Governments have been used such mix of public and private endeavors throughout history. However, the late 20th and early 21st century have seen a clear trend towards governments across the globe making greater use of various PPP arrangements. Now, reading lower down, it also says that the PPP phenomenon is also closely related to privatization. So I'm just trying to make a clear difference between the two, if you will.
Okay, I'll allow the health minister to deal with that issue. All right, caller? Are you holding on, or you wanted to just respond to you? And you listen?
No, I'm listening. She can go ahead and...
Okay, go ahead.
I'm right here.
Well,
Yes.
I don't even know what the question is, because he's saying it's closely related to a PPP. What do you mean closely related to a PPP? How closely is privatization related to a PPP? As far as I know, a public-private partnership has nothing to do with privatization.
Okay. Let me read this again to you. There is no consensus about how to define a PPP. This is from Wikipedia. PPPs can be understood as both a governance mechanism and a language game. When understood as a language game or brand, the PPP phrase can cover hundreds of different types of long-term contracts with a wide range of risks, allocations, funding arrangements, and transparency requirements. And as a brand, the PPP concept is also closely related to concepts such as privatization and the contracting out of government services. When understood as a governance mechanism, the PPP concept encompasses at least 5 families of potential arrangements, one of which is the long-term infrastructure contract in the model of the UK's private finance initiative.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. But the caller is saying clearly it's not clear cut.
It's not.
It's interwoven into several things, and there's need for us to have some kind of specific definition as to how the hospital will be financed.
I think, Tim, that's a lot of semantics. If you're going into a public-private partnership, you have to determine what the terms and conditions of that partnership is going to be. And it really is up to the people entering the arrangement to decide exactly what it is that they are going to do.
The private interest and the government.
And the public interest.
Good evening. Newsmaker Live, thanks for holding on. You're on the air.
Yes, I just needed to ask the minister a question as it relates to nurses and them being on contracts. What is the duration of the contract? How long is a nurse on a contract for?
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay,
hold on. Okay, go ahead.
There are nurses who are on contract for 3 months. There are those who are on contract for 6 months. There are those who are on contract for a year. There are also nurses who are permanent in the system.
So So those on, hold on, call it, those on contract for 3 months.
Yeah.
Very often it'll be what, retired nurses who are getting back into the system?
Some retired nurses, you know, who they just keep on for certain reasons, for special cases. There are new nurses coming in who are on contract for 3 months. As we were about to move to OKEU, a few nurses coming in have been placed on contract because we know that we are going into a statutory operation. So some of them coming in now are being placed on temporary. But a lot of the nurses I came in and found they were just on contract, 6 months, 1 year, and so on.
Go ahead, caller.
Okay, but does that relate just to nurses who are employed at VH or just nurses?
No, the doctors are also on contract, but I do not know of any doctor that's on a 3-month contract. The doctors have longer term contracts.
No, but what I'm saying is, to me, that is not a job that can be handled that way. How do you expect people, nurses who have gone to school, to come back and make a living and obtain something in life? Like buy a piece of land. Can you go to the bank with a 3-month contract, a 6-month contract?
Yeah.
How do you expect these people to improve their lives and the lives of their families by being on such short-term contracts?
This is why as soon as we move into OKEU and we have the board in place, these kinds of contracts we will get rid of. And there will be no need for these kinds of short-term contracts and that sort of thing. But that's what I found there, and right now we still have some nurses who are on these kinds of contracts. And I agree with you, it is not good. There is no security of tenure. You cannot get any kind of financing based on that sort of work arrangement. So we have to look at some getting rid of that.
Yes, caller?
I'm just overwhelmed by listening to these things, but that's all right.
Okay, thank you so much. We continue to take your calls. Once again, my guest this evening, the island's Health Minister, Senator Mary Isaac. We have another caller line. Good evening. Go ahead, please. Hi. Good evening to you, caller.
Good evening, Tim. How are you?
I'm okay, sir. Good evening to you.
Good evening. Good evening.
Jim, there are a few questions I would like to ask you. You see, when people talk about St. George Hospital, right, we talk about there was no plan for the hospital. We talk about all sorts of things, but what we fail to realize, the present government who was there back then, they were the ones who had the plan for the hospital. If there was no plan, I want to know how they started the hospital in the first place. Okay? Then they talk about money and so on and so on. And they talk about how long it took for the hospital to be built. But then they're not saying things that hospital was being built on donations. They're not saying that at all. So as I see it, there are two things that are really going against this present administration when they're making the big hoorah about the hospital. One, they were the ones who had the plan to build a hospital. And two, they had more than enough time to decide whether they should continue or not. But they still went ahead and to build it. Okay? So why are they putting blame on anybody else? Because as far as I can see, anything that was done to the hospital afterwards were just additions and to make it better.
Okay, hold on the line, caller. Madam Health Minister, what say to this?
Okay, as far as I know, Timothy, they were renovated the St. Jude Hospital. The government started out renovating the St. Jude Hospital. The hospital burnt on the 9th of September 2009. And this administration was out of office in 2011, I believe. So by the time you figure out what is going to happen, what you are going to do, get the funding to start renovating the hospital, and like you said, a lot of it, yes, were donations, then you are out of office, right? So the new government came in. The hospital was partly renovated. It was starting to get renovated, and that is where they took off. They picked it up. You understand?
But
so when it comes to blame, and I'm not blaming anyone, I am just saying it as I see it. So those who want to blame can go ahead and blame. What I see is we have a problem and we have to fix it. And we are doing the best that we can, given the circumstances that we inherited, for us to fix the problem.
Well, I have more questions, because the thing is, I want to administration, how much is it going to cost us to make this a workable solution? Okay, I have not heard anything of that sort. And I just heard you say you have to go and look for money. What about the $24 million which is still sitting in the bank? What are we doing with that money? That money is still sitting there because when the former administration left, they left monies to finish the hospital or to at least bring it up to a standard. When you come in, you can just take a loan or whatever you have to do to finish it.
Madam Minister?
$24 million, you say?
Yes.
I don't think that would go. $10 million US. I don't think that would go very far in fixing the hospital.
Yes, but the question is, I have not heard in all what this administration is saying. I have not heard anybody put a figure. And I heard Mr. Joseph said, correct me if I'm wrong, he said with 40, it's going to take more to make this a workable solution than to build a new hospital. Right? He said he's getting $40 million US to build a new hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would like to hear from this administration, go with the engineers and architects and whoever and tell us, St. Lucians, how much it is going to cost us right now to make this hospital, okay, to finish it and to make it, a workable hospital where people can actually go and use the hospital. That is what I want to hear.
Thank you so much for calling, sir.
Thank you.
What say you, ma'am?
Okay, well, I know that they are looking in a ballpark figure of about $120 million. But that is just preliminary because they're still waiting for the forensic audit and so on to come back and that sort of thing. So I believe that Minister Guy Joseph would be the person who will be able to give us those figures. But as far as I know, the last that I heard, we were looking at figures in the area of about $120 million.
We have a caller on line. Good evening. Go ahead, please.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening to you, caller.
To both of you. Miss Isaac, well, listen to your contribution regarding the comment on biting the hands that feed you, that I could have barely stomach. But when it came to St. Jude's, and you refer St. Jude's to being this thing, and just want to kind of remind, this thing actually saved lives. People were born there. This is the thing that you accept. Now you talk about building a new hospital. It will save time, it will save money. How much money would it cost to build a new hospital? And how much money would it cost to continue St. Jude's? Because, I mean, whatever plans you guys have for St. Jude's, I don't think it will utter well for people in the South. I am not pleased about it. All we're asking from you people is to finish St. Jude's. Please finish the hospital. Whatever else you have planned to build a new hospital elsewhere else, it won't work for us. Please finish the hospital. Good night.
Thank you so much for calling.
Okay, first of all, Timothy, when I say thing, I am not referring to St. Jude. That is not St. Jude. The structure I saw there is not St. Jude. It is just a structure, and it really does not speak to me as a hospital. Okay, so I call it a thing. For now, to me, it is a thing, because it's not St. Jude Hospital. In terms of finishing the hospital, we have to wait for the necessary information for us to, and then we have to find the funding to complete the hospital. So it is not just a matter of saying, please finish St. Jude. Yes, we will finish St. Jude, but it is going to take some time because we have to get the financing and we have to ensure that the hospital we are building is going to be up to standard.
Good evening. Newsmaker Live.
Hi, good evening, people.
Hi, good evening to you, sir.
Good evening.
Miss Isaac, did you hear Mr. John Peters night before?
No.
You did not hear him?
I was still at work.
Okay. You know he's a civil engineer?
I believe so.
No, don't believe so. He is. Don't believe so.
If you say so.
No, if I say so. You know that for a fact. Now, the other tour of the hospital, Mr. Peter says, and he said the hospital can be fit and he give a time frame where it can be fixed according to the time.
And did he give a cost?
No, he did not give a cost.
Well, that would be the interesting part, to get a cost.
But he said to me, as if he said, what amount of money that will do it, you know.
Oh, it would be good to get that amount.
I can't remember often, but the tape is there.
Mm-hmm.
He was on the news. He was on the news night before. You can get the tape, and then you can run it. And hear what Mr. Peter has to say as a civil engineer. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for calling. We continue to take your calls. We await another call once again for my guest. I'll not attempt to ask her a question because I suspect we'll have another call coming in. Okay, we have a call. Good evening, you're on the air.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening to you, ma'am.
Good night, Miss
Good
Isaac.
night.
Good evening to you.
Yes. You know, I feel so sorry for St. Jude. You know why? Too much politics is being played in St. Jude. Too much. And I think that this present government should do what they have to do with St. Jude's as soon as possible. Do not drag on it.
I
do
agree.
what has to be done. Okay?
I agree with you.
Because this is very important. This is people's health.
That's right.
Okay, my darling?
Yes.
And you as Minister of Health need to put pressure on your minister for what he is,
Finance.
Guy Joseph and the Prime Minister, and get them going to do whatever has to be done to get St. Jude's going. Too much politics is being played with St. Jude's. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
I agree with
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I think we already have another call coming in. Good evening, you're on the air. Okay, we lost that call. So continue to call us. Once again, the telephone number is on screen, 451-9788. Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening to you, sir.
evening.
Yeah, I heard Miss Mary Isaac said that to build a new hospital it might cost about $40 million.
I have not said that, sir.
And so I heard you said Mr. Guy Joseph said something similar to that.
No.
Okay, I may overheard, but I heard as well. I listened to the engineer. The last caller was saying about. He said he said a cost to finish the hospital. He did say the cost. He said he saw the hospital, and there is a lot of mistakes there. He said that as well. A lot of mistakes there, which can be corrected. But it might cost about $30 to $40 million.
About?
Yes, about $30 to $40 million.
Okay.
That's exactly what he said.
Was it US dollars or EC dollars?
This one I don't know whether it's EC or US.
All right.
But he said there's a lot of mistakes there, but it can be corrected. But it might take about $30 to $40 million. Because I listened to the entire show, and that's what I really. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for calling. Once again, Newsmaker Live, where we continue to take your calls for my guest. Good evening, you're on the air. Hello? Okay, we lost that call. But you can detect from what the callers are saying, especially the caller before the last, that there's need for some kind of urgency as far as this project is concerned.
Timothy, I appreciate the fact that people are showing so much concern over St. Jude Hospital. And I know that some people will say over the past 5 years, the former government had 5 years and nobody was fussing, right? I'm sure it was a concern then, but the people, for some reason, when the United Workers' Party is in power, people have a sense of freedom. People want things to get done because they know that the United Workers' Party get things done, right? So I am not surprised that so many people are asking to finish St. Jude. St. Jude is also very, very important. It is a critical asset in the South, right? And the fact that the stadium is creating the people in the stadium, the nurses, the workers, the people who come there for care find themselves under so much pressure is, of course, another means of concern for us as a government.
Producer, do we have a call? My apologies. Okay, my apologies.
Hello?
Let's take the call. Good evening, thanks for holding on. Go ahead,
Hello?
please.
Good
yes.
evening.
Good evening to you, caller.
Hello?
Hi, good evening. You're on the air. Go ahead, please.
The question I want to ask is, if the St. Jude Hospital had finished and the patient was already in the hospital, what would you all do with that, with the structure? Would you all find a fault with the structure still? If they had completed and the patient was already in it, would you all take out the patient and put them back
caller, that's not a fair question.
Or would you all leave it as it is?
All right, thank you so much. That's really not a fair question to ask. We're talking about hypothetically and all that. The fact remains that we have to deal with the situation as it is. We have a hospital that has not been completed.
That's right.
And the government has to find a way to deal with that particular issue.
That is right.
Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air. Hello. Producer, do we have a call? Yes, go ahead, please, caller. Hello. Okay, we lost that call. Yeah. You're saying?
Yes, I was. Okay, let me go to people saying, Timothy, to complete what is there, it's going to cost 30 million, 40 million, whatever. Do you want to complete a structure with problems, as opposed to starting a new hospital and having a hospital that meets the required standards for a hospital? The two would finish in about the same time, and they would cost about the same amount.
But my information is it takes a lot longer to construct a hospital from the ground up, eh?
No, Timothy.
It takes,
not necessarily,
because I've been hearing
Timothy.
people speaking about this over the last few months. We've been discussing it. At least, up to 8 years at least, I've been told. But let's take a call. Good evening, this is Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, good evening to you, caller.
Good evening to Tim.
Good evening to you, ma'am.
And of course to your guest, Madam Minister.
Good evening.
Am I allowed to stray from St. Jude's?
What would you like to speak on?
It's something which I experienced about a year ago at the polyclinic.
Go ahead, please.
But first, Madam Minister, are there certain medications which are free from public pharmacies? Hello?
Medication for dialysis patients, that is free, yes.
What about hypertensive and diabetic patients?
Yes, that medication is free as well.
Okay. I went to the polyclinic to get medication for hypertension for a certain patient. But the pharmacist said to me that it could not be purchased free. For it to be purchased free, the patient had to be both hypertensive and diabetic. I couldn't believe what she was saying to me. And she said, in addition, they must both appear on the same prescription. Now, that was about a year ago. Is this something that can be checked? And Madam Minister, what is the government's policy in that regard? If indeed it is true, is it something that should be reviewed? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for calling.
Yeah, as far as I know, it is free. I do not know any issue. I do not know why it has to be on the same prescription. I do not know. I'm going to look into that, Timothy. As well as that you have to be suffering from both ailments to get the medication for free. I am not sure about that.
We have a final call. Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Yeah, good night to Tim and to the Minister of Health.
Yeah, you're sounding a little bit muffled. I don't know why, caller. Let's take care of this. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, good night, Tim, and good night to the Minister of Health.
Yes, good night to you, caller.
Yeah. Tim, as far as I know, the year 2 when it was first introduced in 2006.
Caller, I don't know why, but you sound a little muffled. I really cannot make out what you are saying.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Just a little better.
Yeah.
Okay. The year 2 came about in 2006. It was to start with patients who are diabetic and patients who have both diabetes and high blood pressure. Now, I'm just talking as a layperson. That's a layperson, that information I got. Diabetics and people who are diabetic and hypertensive. So, if you just have high blood pressure, your medication is not free. For you to get a medication free, you either have to have diabetes or have a combination of diabetes and high blood pressure. What they call DM, HPN or DM. So if you just have high blood pressure, you are not covered in the sense that the medication is not free. You see, this And it had to be a progressive. So by now, I suppose with the administration, by now everybody would have been covered. But it was started with patients who are diabetic for them to get the medication free. So if they were just diabetic, or if they have diabetes and high blood pressure, only then would they get the medication free. But if you don't have diabetes, in other words, you have to pay for your medication.
Okay, all right.
Okay, thank you so much.
That's how it was and that's how it's still is.
Okay, thanks for explaining that.
Thank you so much for calling.
Yeah.
Let's take the final comments from
So
you,
you
ma'am.
can only get one if you're, okay. Well, Timothy, I am hoping that people understand what I mean when I say that you don't bite the hand that feed you. I go back to that and I say it is a good doctrine to live by, and it is something that should permeate throughout our society. As a child, you don't disrespect your mom should not disrespect the child. In the workplace, the worker does not, and vice versa, the employer and the employee, because you need each other for you to survive. So either way, you do not bite the hand that feed you. I want to assure the workers at St. Jude, the people who access services at St. Jude Hospital, that the government is doing everything that it can to get the new hospital to start construction of a new hospital, but it has to get the financing as well as to complete the structure that is there and turn it into, hopefully, a medical university. Everybody in the healthcare sector, we will be consulting with everyone, all the stakeholders, before we do anything, before we complete our whole national health insurance project that we are embarking on right now. The workers from OKEU and going into OKEU, I do not want anybody to be fearful about, their future in terms of that, because as you know, we will not put you in a worse situation than you were in. Things can only get better. So I want to say to all the people of St. Lucia that we are really looking into the healthcare situation so that we can bring better care to our people in St. Lucia. We can put in a care package that is going to take care of the people who now are not at work, who are not employed and cannot access healthcare. So we are looking at making a better St. Lucia, where we have healthier lifestyles and we have people living longer because they will be able to access healthcare. I want to thank all the workers at the Ministry of Health, especially my permanent secretary, who works really, really hard to ensure that everything is on schedule and that everything runs smoothly. Dwight Calix, Dr. Eugene at VH, my nurses, my doctors, I really want to assure you that we are doing everything we can to put you in a better situation by next year. I thank you,
Thank you so
much,
Madam Health Minister, for being my guest on this evening's Newsmaker Live. And to you, thank you so much for watching the broadcast and contributing via your calls. If it's Wednesday, it's Newsmaker Live. Time now for the clip that peaked. Was once again, thank you so much for watching the broadcast. Here's hoping that you enjoyed it. Have yourself a very good evening. My name is Timothy Paulion. See you next time.